There are seasons in life when a person no longer feels as though they are truly living, but only as though they are trying not to collapse. They still wake up in the morning, still do what has to be done, still reply to a few messages, still move through a day that looks much like any other, yet somewhere deep inside, a part of them has grown so tired that it can no longer believe anything genuinely good will ever happen again. Not because of one single devastating event, but because of too many disappointments, too many long waits, too many times they thought they were about to reach another shore, only to find themselves returning almost empty-handed once again. That feeling lasts so long that it no longer feels like a clear sadness. It becomes the atmosphere of life itself. A person stops complaining, stops explaining, stops blaming, but from that moment on, they quietly begin to believe that perhaps the best part of their life has somehow gone missing. Real exhaustion does not come from one isolated failure. It comes from watching too many doors close, while still trying not to let yourself become bitter. It comes from seeing other people move forward, while you remain stuck in a stretch of road you do not even know how to explain. It comes from telling yourself that you only need to endure a little longer, only to realize that this little longer has stretched into years. From the outside, people may think this is just an ordinary stagnant phase, but the person living inside it knows that it is not that simple, because the deepest pain is not that you have not arrived yet. It is that you have started to doubt whether there is still any place truly waiting for you at all. And perhaps it is from that point that a very strange turning begins to take shape. Not loudly, not gloriously. There is no single date to circle on a calendar and say, "This is when my life changed." It begins in the very silence that seems most hopeless, in the days when no one calls your name, in the late afternoons when the future looks blurred like mist, in the moments when your spirit feels so depleted that it can no longer even encourage itself. And the strange thing is that many of the greatest transformations in a person's life do not begin when they are strongest, brightest, or most confident. They begin when the old layers of support start to crack, revealing a self that is more bare, more honest, and less able than ever to lie to itself. Before we go further, if you enjoy this kind of slow, thoughtful content, the kind that does not shout yet still touches the most real stretches of human life, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a comment. Sometimes, one sentence from you can become the very thing that helps someone else, standing in the dark stretch of their own life, realize they have not been abandoned. What many people fail to see is that a long season of silence does not always mean that life has turned its back on you. Some quiet stretches do not come to extinguish you, but to remove the layers of life that no longer belong to you. But because we are so used to reading everything through visible signs, we panic when there are no obvious results. We are used to judging life by what appears on the surface right away. Is work improving? Is money getting better? Are other people recognizing me? Are my relationships becoming easier? And if those things are not moving yet, we quickly conclude that we must be standing still. But the truth is that there are seasons when all of a person's energy is being drawn inward to do something very deep, to dismantle the old architecture of the self. That is why some people may look perfectly functional on the outside, while inwardly something like a total transfusion is taking place. They can no longer tolerate what they once tolerated with ease. Conversations that once felt normal begin to exhaust them. Goals that once mattered now sound as if they belong to someone else's life. Habits that once helped them survive suddenly feel empty, not because those habits were wrong in themselves, but because the person using them is no longer the same. When change has not gone deep enough yet, A person can still use discipline to force themselves forward. But once the inner core has shifted, every act of forcing gradually produces nothing but depletion. You keep doing what needs to be done, but you no longer truly belong to what you are doing. You keep living, but you no longer feel as though you are standing at the true center of your own life. This is the stage most easily misunderstood. Other people may tell you that you are too negative, too sensitive, too hard to please. At times, even you will accuse yourself in the same way. You will tell yourself that you should be more grateful, more resilient, calmer, somehow more able to get over it. But those self-criticisms only hide something deeper. It may be that you have not become weaker at all. It may simply be that you no longer have the capacity to keep living at the old frequency. There was a man who spent many years living with exactly that feeling. He worked in a job that looked enviable to everyone around him. It had status. It had income. It offered a clear path forward. Everything about his life had the appearance of stability. And yet the longer he stayed inside that structure, the more he felt his spirit quietly withering in a way he could not explain. Not because the work was unbearably hard, not because he lacked ability. On the contrary, he was good at it, good enough that everyone assumed he should continue. And that was exactly what trapped him. Because when something is hurting you and the world keeps praising it, you begin to mistrust your own feelings. You think there must be something wrong with you. You think perhaps you are too demanding, too restless, too unable to appreciate what you have. So he kept trying harder. He tried in all the ways adults often use to keep themselves inside a life that no longer fits. He tried becoming more disciplined, more diligent. He tried to recover his old enthusiasm. He tried to persuade himself that this phase would pass. But there are some things effort cannot save, because what needs to change is not the intensity of your striving, but the very nature of the relationship between you and the life you are living. Day after day, he still finished his work, still communicated well enough, still smiled and spoke just enough so that no one would ask too many questions. But one truth became clearer and clearer inside him. He no longer wanted to spend the rest of his life proving the worth of a version of himself that had already begun to drift away. What matters here is that the fracture did not arrive all at once. It came in layers. A project that had once mattered deeply suddenly no longer stirred him. One morning, he opened his computer, and his hand felt as heavy as stone. He spoke to a client using all the right words, smooth and professional. And yet inwardly, he felt completely empty. He returned home one evening and no longer understood why he should keep sustaining this rhythm of life. These were all small signs, scattered signs, easy to dismiss if you looked only with logic. But once such signs repeat long enough, they gather into a truth that can no longer be avoided. The part of him that had once been suited to this life had already begun to move on. Then the disruption came, not as a punishment, but as the final push that toppled what had already been leaning for a long time. A major contract was lost. A close relationship broke apart. He had to change where he lived. In a short period of time, he lost almost every point of support that had once made him feel life was under control. From the outside, it looked like complete failure. A man in decline. A man who had lost the most important things at an adult stage of life. And at the time, even he believed that was true. Because if you read your life only through what can be seen, he had no reason to think otherwise. And yet, in that small rented room, where for the first time he no longer had to maintain his old image for anyone's eyes, something quiet began to appear. Not a grand plan, not an unexpected opportunity, not a helping hand from outside. It was a very small need, almost an absurd one by practical standards. He began to draw, not to make money, not to impress anyone, not to prove he had talent. He simply drew the lines he liked, the shapes he felt drawn to, the things that had no obvious place in a resume, a title, or the old logic of success. He drew because if he did not, he felt he could no longer breathe. And many times in life, the real turning does not begin with the most logical thing, but with the one thing that, if you refuse it, you can no longer continue as a person who is still alive inside. And from what seemed useless, another door slowly began to open. No grand drama, no revelation from the heavens, just one acquaintance who saw the drawings. Then another person who looked at them. Then a small invitation appeared. Then an opportunity that, had he still been living by his old mind, he would have dismissed immediately because it did not resemble the serious path he had once believed in. But this time, there was a part of him that no longer wanted to betray that quiet calling. So he said yes. From one small yes, other turns gradually appeared. What had once seemed disconnected began to join together into a form he had never imagined before. Work was no longer the place where he preserved his old image. It slowly became the place where he used everything he had lost, learned, and suffered to build a truer way of living. That is what very few people can see when they are standing in the dark part of the story. The deepest comeback is not a return to the version of yourself that once succeeded. It is a movement toward a new form of life that the old version of you could never have imagined. If we keep trying to restore the life we used to have, we may miss the very thing that all the breaking was preparing us for. That is why many real comebacks in life do not look like a restoration. They look like a new birth. The same material is still there. It is still the same human being. But the way they now exist in life is no longer the same. The hardest part is that we usually only accept change once we have clear proof that it will lead somewhere good. But life does not work that way. Many turning points open only when we are willing to step forward before anything has been proven. Not blindly, but honestly, in response to what we already know too well in the deepest part of ourselves. Sometimes you know something ended a long time ago, but you still do not have the courage to name it. Sometimes you know a path no longer fits, but you are afraid to leave because of the emptiness beyond it. Sometimes you know you are standing at a threshold, but because you cannot yet see the next room, you keep hesitating, and often that hesitation prolongs suffering even more than the original loss itself. If there is one thing that needs to be said clearly at the beginning of this story, it is this. Perhaps you have not been abandoned at all. Perhaps what is happening is not proof that your life is closing down, but the final stage of a structure that has already finished serving its purpose. Perhaps this suspended feeling is not a punishment, but the necessary transition between an old life and a new one. And perhaps the thing that frightens you most right now is the very door that, once crossed, would free you from having to live through the part of yourself that has been exhausted for far too long. This is not an easy comfort. It is not the shallow promise that pain always means a reward is coming, or that every loss will surely be repaid. Life is not that simple, but there is a truth about being human that anyone who has lived long enough eventually sees. There are seasons that seem to push us against the wall, when in fact, they are the moments when everything false begins to fall away, revealing what can no longer be postponed. No old way of living, no old faith, no old ambition, no old voice left to soothe yourself with. And it is precisely because there is nowhere left to hide that a person finally begins to hear the true voice within. Perhaps that voice has been inside you for a very long time. It is small, which is why it is so often drowned out by fear, by comparison, by the noise of all the things you think you should do. But it is still there, a feeling that you cannot go on living this way forever, a vague but persistent knowing that what is collapsing is not entirely a disaster, a very deep stillness, even while the surface is full of anxiety. If you can still hear even a little of that voice, then perhaps the door has never disappeared. Perhaps it is right here, inside this dark stretch, not waiting in some other beautiful day far away. What causes most people to miss the greatest turning point of their lives is not that they are not talented enough, deep enough, or worthy enough. More often, they miss it for a far simpler reason. They are afraid of no longer recognizing themselves. When everything begins to crack, when old habits can no longer save them, when the goals that once shone so brightly begin to fade, when the things that once created a sense of safety now leave behind only a quiet suffocation. A person's first instinct is almost always to cling. We cling to the old rhythm of life, the old roles, the old image of who we are, as if holding on tightly enough will keep us from being pulled into the emptiness opening in front of us. But that clinging is exactly what makes the dark season last longer. Because once a part of your life has completed its role, you cannot save it through effort alone. You may be able to prolong it a little longer, decorate it, pour more discipline into it, add more responsibility, repeat more phrases about needing to try harder, but you cannot truly bring it back to life as it once was. Some things do not end because we are weak. They end because we have reached a place where we no longer belong to them. But human beings find this almost impossible to accept. We prefer to think that if we just try harder, adjust a little more, endure a little longer, become a little smarter, a little more resilient, then everything will return to its proper orbit. That idea sounds mature, strong, even admirable, but often it is only a polished way of refusing the truth that we have already changed too deeply. That is why, after long seasons of silent fracture, many people enter a period in which they appear very diligent and capable on the outside, while inside they grow emptier by the day. They rebuild their schedules. They tighten their grip on themselves. They begin to study more, work more, carry more, move faster. They call it recovery, but most of the time, they are only trying to cover one unbearable question with more noise. The question is painfully simple. If I am no longer the person I used to be, then who am I now? And because there is no new answer yet, people go back to clutching the old one, even when it no longer fits. The suffering of this stage is that your very decency and sense of responsibility can end up betraying you. An irresponsible person may walk away as soon as they no longer feel like staying, but someone who has always tried to live honorably, someone who has taken life seriously, finds it much harder to let go. They feel gratitude for what they have had. They remember the years when they poured their whole heart and strength into it. They are afraid of disappointing others. They are afraid of being reckless. They are afraid of the loss that will come if they admit that the path which once felt so right no longer fits them now. So they stay far longer than they should, long after their heart has already left. And to live one more day in a place where your heart no longer remains is its own kind of erosion. The man in that earlier story was the same. After the first collapse, he could have stopped then. He could have been honest with himself sooner, but he did not. He turned back and tried to save everything. Not because he was foolish, but because he was too used to being the person who could always manage. He had built his life on the ability to repair, rebuild, hold things together, recover, overcome. For years, whenever something went wrong, he was always the one who found a way. So this time was no different. His old instinct pushed him forward, telling him he could not let go, could not soften, could not allow everything to fall apart so easily. He took on more work, met more people, made more plans, forced himself to quickly find a new direction. And for a short while, things truly did seem better. There was movement, there was rhythm, there was the feeling that he was still in control. But only those who have lived through a season like that understand how fragile that kind of better really is. It is like rebuilding a house on ground that has already shifted. The walls may still stand, the roof may still keep out the rain, but inside, nothing feels solid. The person living there knows that sooner or later, the cracks will show again, because the distortion is not on the surface. And just as expected, after trying to save everything for a while, he began to feel so tired that he no longer even had the energy to be angry. It was the exhaustion of someone who had finally understood that he was not failing because he had not done enough, but because he kept pouring effort into a structure that no longer held any life. We often imagine that the most painful part of change is losing what we once had, but not always. Sometimes the most painful part is realizing how much time we spend protecting something that should have been allowed to leave long ago. That pain feels like regret, shame, and tenderness toward yourself all at once. You look back and think, if only I had listened to my heart sooner. If only I had stopped trying to prove myself through all this holding on. But human beings rarely learn anything important through theory alone. Some truths have to wear us out before they are finally willing to settle inside us. And perhaps those repeated cycles of going back only to watch things break again are exactly what free us from romanticizing the old life, so that the next act of letting go comes not just from logic, but from something understood in the bone. There was another woman who once lived through this same kind of trap, except the thing that held her there was not work, but a dream she had poured almost all of her youth into. She had built a business of her own with all her faith, all her time, and all her sacrifice. There were years when she lived and breathed it, believing that if she just tried long enough, well enough, faithfully enough, this would be the place where her life would truly bloom. And for a long time, that belief was not wrong. It sustained her. It carried her through difficult stretches. But then, the market changed. People changed, and she herself changed. What had once been the center slowly became a burden. She began waking up anxious before the day had even fully begun. She had to strain just to keep the system running. She had to spend more and more energy simply maintaining what had once been a source of life. The most frightening part was that she understood everything had changed, and still she did not dare let go. She did not dare let go because she was afraid that if she did, it would mean all those years had been a mistake. All those sacrifices would become meaningless. Everything she had exchanged for this dream would turn into a story of failure. That fear is real, common, and incredibly difficult to escape. Once we have invested too much of ourselves into something, we do not cling to it only because it still has value in the present. We cling to it because we cannot bear the thought that our past may need to be reinterpreted. So we stay, not only to preserve the thing itself, but to protect the meaning of everything we once gave to it. Yet, there is a harsh truth that everyone must eventually learn. Continuing is not always the way to honor the past. Sometimes knowing how to stop at the right time is the only way to keep those past years from turning into one long, endless act of endurance. That woman reached a point of depletion too. She no longer had the strength to keep holding on, no longer had the heart to believe in it the way she once had. She let go, but she let go in great pain, because she was not only releasing a work model, She was letting go of the image of who she had believed she would become. And after she let go, a vast emptiness opened up. That emptiness is what frightens so many people, which is why they cling rather than step into it. Because in emptiness, there is no old title, no old rhythm, no old familiar busyness to drown out the voice of the heart. There, you have to look at yourself more closely, hear yourself more clearly, and face everything you have ignored for too long. Not everyone is ready for that. And yet, strangely, it is often only after emptiness appears that a person begins to breathe again. Not breathe in immediate happiness, but breathe in the sense that, for the first time, they are no longer straining to keep alive a structure that has been draining them dry. From that place, new forms of seeing begin to appear, not dramatically, not with the air of revelation. They arrive in fragments. An idea once dismissed suddenly lights up. A new connection between old experiences begins to reveal itself. Another field, smaller, quieter, but more fitting, begins calling their name. And what matters is this: what is new usually cannot be seen while we are still curled tight in survival mode. Only once we stop straining to save the old do our eyes become free enough to notice the new. This is exactly where so many people ruin the doorway of their own lives. They demand that the new must reveal itself clearly from the very beginning, before they are willing to release the old. But life does not move in that order. Very often, the new only appears after you have had the courage to put down what has already expired within you. Not because life is cruel, but because when both hands are still clinging tightly to the past, you cannot open yourself to receive anything else. The real shift in a person's life does not happen when all the answers are already there. It happens when you agree to walk through a stretch where you can no longer live the old way, even though you do not yet know how you will live next. And it is in that uncertain stretch that something very important begins to form. The ability to hear signals instead of merely reacting to noise. What is the noise? It is comparing yourself to others. It is asking why they have gone farther than you. It is fearing that at your age, you still have not become anything. It is the obsession with needing concrete achievement in order to prove that your life has not been wasted. It is the pressure to recover quickly so no one will see you as a failure. All of that is loud, which is why it sounds convincing. Signals are different. They are quiet, sparse, but steady. A signal is the very light, yet very real feeling that comes when you think of a certain path. It is the unexpected calm you feel around a certain person. It is the softening inside when you allow yourself to leave an old structure. It is the quiet clarity that appears when you do something small that does not betray who you are. Signals do not shout. They simply wait until you are less panicked, so you can hear them. That is why the greatest threshold is not found in external events, but in the moment when you stop reading your life through fear. As long as fear is in control, everything looks like a verdict. Silence feels like abandonment. Slowness feels like uselessness. Loss feels like life turning its back on you. But if you go deeply enough, there comes a moment when you begin to see differently. You begin to understand that some things fall away, not to torment you, but to force you out of roles that have become too small. Some still periods are not signs that you are worthless, but signs that your whole inner structure is quietly rearranging itself. Some days offer no achievement worth reporting, yet they are among the most important of all, because in those days you are learning not to go back to being your old self, simply for the sake of feeling safe. This does not mean everything becomes easy from here. Realizing it is not the same as being finished. You will still have days when you want to go back. You will still feel the ache of watching others move faster. You will still doubt everything you have just begun to trust. You will still wonder whether you have imagined all of this. But the difference is that once you have seen the true nature of this threshold, you can no longer fully believe the old voice. You begin to recognize when you are acting out of panic and when you are acting out of truth. You begin to feel the difference between a decision born from the fear of losing something and a decision born from the deepest part of you that wants to live honestly. And that is where the real turning begins to show itself. Not in some great victory, not in some dramatic breakthrough that makes everyone look your way. It reveals itself in small choices that no longer betray who you are, in refusing something once familiar because you know it is no longer right, in walking slowly into a new direction even though no one has recognized it yet, in no longer using busyness to escape emptiness, in learning to sit with not knowing, without rushing to grab an old version of yourself and put it back on. These things look small, but in truth, they are the first steps of a new life quietly taking shape. And then one day, after wanting to go back so many times and discovering that going back is no longer possible, a person begins to understand that what is waiting ahead is not a chance to live the old life again, but an invitation to live differently. That understanding does not arrive like lightning. It does not suddenly flood everything with light. It comes slowly, quietly, and usually only appears after we have grown too tired to keep performing the role of our former self. And it is in that moment that a strange calm begins to take shape. Not the calm of someone who has all the answers, but the calm of someone who has finally stopped forcing life to return what no longer belongs to them. Many people still believe that the greatest comeback of a human life must look radiant. It must be the moment when everything improves all at once. Work becomes bright again. Money becomes stable again. Relationships begin to open. Even your face looks different. Your voice sounds different, and the whole world seems to need to see and acknowledge that you have escaped that dark season. But the truth is often much deeper. A real comeback does not begin when other people can see that you have changed. It begins when fear no longer gets to decide your life. It begins when you accept that some things cannot be saved by effort, that some places cannot be stayed in any longer just because you once gave too much to them, that some dreams, if held too tightly, stop being dreams and become cages built out of your own loyalty. From that moment on, every movement inside you begins to change. You may still have no proof to place in front of anyone. Your outer life may still be messy, unfinished, lacking any clear shape that can easily be named. But in the deepest place within you, you are no longer standing where you once stood before. You lived like someone who always had to run in order to catch up, someone who always had to prove they had not been left behind, someone who had to seize some visible result in order to reassure themselves that life was still going in the right direction. But now, after everything that has happened, another way of living begins to emerge. You no longer want to keep running just to feel less afraid. You begin to need something else. You need what is true. You need what fits. You need the feeling that what you choose, where you stand, the people you stay close to, and the work you do no longer betray the deepest part of who you are. That is when small things begin to carry great meaning. A decision you once would have agreed to immediately because it felt safe now makes your heart hesitate. An opportunity that looks bright, sensible, and worth taking begins, the longer you look at it, to carry the scent of your old life. An invitation that once would have made you proud now only leaves you tired. In the past, perhaps you would have forced yourself to accept it, afraid that saying no would mean you were foolish, wasting an opportunity, making your own future harder. But now, something inside you can no longer endure that way of living, not because you have grown weaker, but because you have finally come close enough to your own truth that you can no longer call what is misaligned right, simply because it looks attractive on the surface. There was once a man who believed that if he lost what he had built, he would lose himself as well. For many years, he lived with the conviction that his worth was tied tightly to his work, his position, and his ability to build a life that other people would have to admire. Then, when those structures began to crack one by one, he panicked, not only because he was losing income or stability, but because he no longer knew who he was without them. For a long time, he tried to fill that emptiness by recovering the old feeling, the old rhythm, the old thrill of continuing to climb. But the harder he tried, the darker his spirit became, until one day, after wearing himself down completely, he stopped trying to make himself feel inspired again. He sat still, did small things no one expected of him, and for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to follow something that offered no obvious guarantee at all. That permission changed everything. Not overnight, not as some miracle in which every door suddenly swung open, but little by little, another life began to reveal itself through the very things he had once treated as marginal, the lines he had drawn only for himself, the ideas he once thought had no place, the emotions he had dismissed as impractical, all of it slowly connected into a path that had never existed while he was still living inside the old frame. And what mattered most was this. For the first time, he was no longer building his life out of fear of losing his place. He was building from something quieter, truer, less dramatic, but far more accurate. What he had once called success began to feel far too narrow compared to the experience of living in rhythm with his own soul. The woman who had let go of her old dream went through something similar. After she stopped trying to rebuild what no longer had life in it, she entered a very quiet season. No one looking at her from the outside would have fully understood it. There was nothing to show off, no achievement clear enough to be told as a victory. And yet, that quiet stretch became the place where she began to recover in the deepest way. She slept better, breathed more deeply, no longer woke each morning carrying the heavy burden of trying to keep a collapsing structure standing for one more day. From that new openness, she began to notice what she had not been able to see before, connections between her past experience and a different direction, small possibilities that felt profoundly right, a way to use everything those years had given her without having to return to the life she once lived. She came to understand that none of those years had been wasted. They were simply being rearranged to serve another shape of life, one she never would have seen if she had not hurt enough to finally let go. That is exactly where so many people misunderstand what a return truly is. They think returning means reclaiming what was lost. But not always. Some of the deepest returns in life are not about getting the old thing back, but about finally stepping into what has long been waiting for you on another frequency. When that happens, outwardly it may still look as though everything is only just beginning again. You are still learning, still moving slowly, still lacking the kind of certainty the world likes to celebrate. But inwardly, an enormous turning has already been completed. You are no longer living in order to patch the old shape back together. You are beginning to live in order to discover what is truly trying to unfold from within you after everything you have been through. And once you reach that place, your relationship with waiting changes as well. Before, waiting felt like imprisonment, like being ignored by life. like a painful reminder that other people were moving while you were stuck. But now, even though waiting is still not easy, it no longer carries the same meaning. You begin to feel that within the silence, another kind of movement is taking place. Something is forming, even if you cannot yet name it. There are days when outwardly nothing seems to happen, yet inwardly you feel a little clearer than yesterday, a little lighter than yesterday, a little less at war with yourself than yesterday. Changes like that are not easy to explain to anyone, but they are the truest proof that your life is no longer standing in the same place. From then on, the success of other people also stops cutting into you in the old way. Not because you have become more noble, but because you no longer read their progress as a verdict against your own life. You begin to understand that each person has their own season of preparation, their own kind of breaking, their own delay between the inner world and the outer one. Someone else shining does not mean that you have gone dark. Someone else arriving does not mean your door has closed. In fact, it may be only after you stop using other people's lives as your measure that you can finally hear the rhythm of your own. And once you can hear your own rhythm, you no longer feel desperate to chase every train that passes by. The most beautiful part is that after moving through this stage, your intuition changes. Before, perhaps you had instincts too, but you often covered them over with logic almost immediately. You demanded that everything make sense first, that there be enough proof first, that other people approve first, before you were willing to trust what you felt. But after a deep transformation, you begin to realize that some things can only be seen by a part of you that is quieter than logic, not by rejecting reason, but by putting it back in its proper place. Reason helps organize, it helps execute, it helps give form to your choices, but the deepest knowing within you is what points to the direction itself. And once you have touched that kind of knowing, you no longer want to live entirely under the rule of fear disguised as rationality. That is why, when a real comeback happens, other people may say that you were lucky, that you finally met the right person, the right time, the right opportunity, that, after a difficult stretch, fortune returned to you. But only you know that nothing returned at all. Something new was formed. A new self had quietly grown through each exhausted season, through every act of letting go, through every day of moving forward, without anything certain to hold on to. What now appears as opportunity, as a turning point, as an open door, became visible only because your eyes had changed. You had changed. And once the one who is looking becomes different, the life being looked at begins to arrange itself into a different order as well. Perhaps that is the deepest meaning of every real transformation. It is not about proving to the world that you can still make it. It is not about winning back an old game. It is not about shocking the people who once underestimated you. Even if those things happen, they are only side effects. The real meaning lies here. You no longer have to betray the deepest part of yourself in order to feel at peace. You no longer have to use busyness to run from emptiness. You no longer have to use achievement to cover up the feeling that something is out of rhythm. You no longer have to remain inside a story that has grown too tight simply because you have been writing it for too long. You keep going, and this time, the price you pay is no longer your own self. So if right now you are still in that in-between stretch, still living through days so quiet they frighten you, still sometimes wanting to return just because the familiar feels safer, then hold on to this. The fact that nothing is clear yet does not mean nothing is happening. The fact that your outer life has not changed shape does not mean your inner life is standing still. Some of the most important movements take place for a very long time in darkness, for a very long time in silence, so long that even the person living through them begins to believe they have lost their direction. But if a truth has already appeared in your heart, one you no longer have the strength to deny, if you have begun to see that you cannot go on living the old way without hurting the truest part of yourself, then perhaps that door has already opened. And once it has opened, what is needed is not a dramatic breakthrough for other people to admire. What is needed is the honesty to walk through it. Slowly is fine. Trembling is fine. Not fully understanding is fine. Just do not go back to wearing the clothes that no longer fit, simply because you are afraid of the emptiness ahead. Because often, that emptiness is not the place where you lose everything. It is the place where a truer life finally has room to begin.